All right, we are going to be finishing up our Assignment 2 creature collage with this demonstration. Little things we can do. You can see I've brought in all my different features. I've added some rock elements to the shell. Now what I really need to do is help blend some of these textures together. And for doing that, I'm going to use more than just the low opacity eraser. Because right now it just looks like a magazine collage, right? Everything's shaped and fit into where it needs to be, but nothing is blended yet. I'm going to be using what's called Clone Stamp, and we're going to get really good at that tool. And it takes quite a bit of processing though. So now that I have all of my elements here in different layers, I'm going to crop it using the cropping tool, giving it enough space so I have clear white space all the way around it. Then I hit return. And what that does is it takes its memory down significantly. And if I save it from there, then it will help my processing speed. And so when I use the Clone Stamp, it will be able to go a lot faster and not slow me down. So what can I do to kind of blend some of these textures together? Well, I can use different blending modes. I've added a few components here to the feet and to the shell. But for instance, I really like this, but I also really like this. How do I blend that edge together? Well, what I could do is try different blending modes, so not having it be opaque at 100%. I could have it be an overlay. Whoops, wrong layer. Here we go. And you see how that will affect it, but I want it to be a little bit stronger, so I'm going to do a more direct approach. The first thing you can always do is play with your color balance and your levels. So I'm going to go up to Image Adjustments. We should be used to these kind of adjustments by now. We're going to use them a whole lot. And I'm just going to shift the highlights a little bit darker by limiting them. And then maybe brighten the midtones a little bit. I don't want to lose any quality information. And now the one that's really going to help, because it's a very yellow kind of shell and warm light on this rock, but this light feels cooler, I'm going to go up to Color Balance and just shift my midtones a little bit yellower. That helps a whole lot. Maybe a little bit more red. My highlights are pretty good. Maybe a tiny bit of cyan to them. A little bit more yellow. Yep. Actually, it might go the other way. And then shadows, I actually like to do the opposite in shadows that I do from highlights. Usually warm highlights, cool shadows. But in this case, since it's lava, I might actually push the shadows quite red if I want that kind of glowing effect. So that's step one. It helps, but I still have this really strong edge. So how can I work with that? Well, I'm going to zoom in using Command+. I have my layers in the order I like. I can always use a soft-edged kind of blending eraser at a lower opacity. Make it a little bit smaller now. And I can start to kind of find these edges. Blend them together a bit more. Maybe even a lower opacity. The lower opacity you use, the more control you have, but of course the longer it takes. I'm really just trying to get one rock texture to blend into the next as seamlessly as possible. So there's no hard, magazine cutout edge left. So you can do an awful lot with that tool, but sometimes it's not enough. And sometimes you need to just copy and paste a texture in. So for this instance here, I'm actually going to use this tool called Clone Stamp. And it's right below the brush tool. We're going to use the regular Clone Stamp. It works just like the opacity in a brush or in an eraser. but I'm going to start it at 100% opacity. And I'm going to start it, in this case, with a fairly soft edge, fairly large. And let me show you how it works. I can take a texture from anywhere, especially if I set the sample to be current layer and below. And I can paint it in anywhere else. So the first thing I have to do is target that texture. And the way you do that is by holding down the Option key. Now the Option key turns your brush cursor into a little bullseye. And when you hold down Option and then you click there, that shows you what you're targeting. And it will match it. So if I want to blend this texture into this rock, I can do that with Clone Stamp if I can find the right kind of textures that will help. Now the trick is not overdoing it, and so that's usually why I'll try to get hard edges with a 100% Clone Stamp, but then I'll finish it off with lower opacities, just like I would with an eraser, to kind of blend some of these textures together. Now on hard edge surfaces like rock, you want to be a little bit more heavy-handed. But on soft textures like fur, you want to be a lot more soft and gentle. Okay, so let's see what the difference is between that. So this is before clone stamping, and this is after. All right. Now I can also cut it out. If I need hard edges back, I can kind of cut that rock edge out very cleanly. And I can even use clone stamping to put other rocks in the way, if I think that's a good idea. Now you don't want to use it so much that it becomes very copy-pasty. Because they are, for the most part, exact copies of whatever you're using. But I'll roughen up that edge a little. And it's going to help a lot working between this shell and this rock. So I want to show them kind of merging together. So something to play with. We're going to get a lot more practice at it in future assignments, but it's good to be introduced to it here. It can really help you bring patterns and textures together. Now, the only danger of Clone Stamp is that it is creating new pixels and it's overwriting existing pixels. You could do it on its own layer, and as long as you're on current and below layers, that might be even safer, because then you can just turn it on and off. You can erase away from just the clone stamping if you wanted. You can get it all to be more adjustable. But I'm working pretty fast here, trying to get nice transitions. You can use it to cover up things that are awkward or mistakes. And then don't forget the importance of just a nice low opacity eraser as well to start blending some textures. And where a hard edge is working, as long as the colors match, go ahead and use the hard edge. But when it's some awkward transition like this, it can really help to be able to use that clone stamp to just put it all down in a way that makes sense, where you can't tell where the seams are. Let's see, steal this edge here, which looks actually pretty good. Here. Now the other thing you can do on your layers is simply dodge and burn them. So like we did with the landscape, you can darken. I always say do it on midtones and do it less than 30. That way you can deepen shadows where you think they need deepening. You have to know what layer you're on. And I always do midtones, burn darkens them, dodge brightens them. It can help a lot, as long as you know what layer each component is on. And as you grow more confident, you can start merging layers together. Just the way of making everything look more intentional. Okay, so now it's just a few areas in that shell I need to work on. There's some things I need to erase from behind that I don't need anymore. Looks like a line there that still needs to be cleaned up. So I'm going to do it all with the clone stamp, just to extend this texture into something that makes sense. Keep moving where it's coming from so it's not too obvious that it's copy and pasted. And blend this rock in with this shell. Which are two textures I never really thought of as being similar, but they actually are. Quite similar. It works out well. Whoops. And again, the more control you want, the lower the opacity you can use, because you can just keep revisiting it. Now, you can use your move tool with auto layer select to find certain layers. I'm going to burn this down, it's way too bright. That edge, but then you notice as I burn it, it gets a lot more colorful. And so maybe I don't want it so colorful, so then I'm going to go to image adjustment. Well, let me just do something else. Let me use the sponge tool at desaturate, and this will take some of that color down. I'm going to use tools like that because I'm not sure where else this shell is in the composition, and I don't want to change colors that I like. I can also select around it and then do adjustments to just that area, especially levels, and I can deepen its darks, its midtones, something that looks a little sharper. Something that goes between shell and rock. Yeah, starting to come together. Let's see. these subtle rock textures, blending them in